podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the Blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes. Charlton 1, Chelsea 5, and just about the perfect start for Liam Rosenior. We don't want to overanalyze it. It is Charlton who are struggling in the Championship, but just about almost the perfect start for him, you'd say, for his first game in charge. The only sort of blot on the copybook really was that goal conceded predictably from a set piece. But other than that, Chelsea were, let's face it, really, really good. And right from the first minute, really kind of in control of the game. I've really enjoyed all of the Liam Rosenior content sort of leading up to the game. I've sort of been just trying to watch and digest as much of it as possible, really. I talked on the last pod about his interview on Chelsea TV. Since then, we've seen his welcoming press conference, which I thought was very polished. He did a really good interview with TNT Sport with Joe Cole, which was quite entertaining, well worth a watch if you want to find it on YouTube. And he comes across just really well, doesn't he? He has got a bit of Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO about him. That's been said to me by a few people now. He has definitely got that sort of motivational speaker vibe, but he is engaging. He is very, very engaging. In terms of what the lineup was, I think it was certainly a lot more rotation than I'd expected. And I think for a few of us, I think we sort of feared the worst a little bit when we saw the team. But as it turned out, it was fine. And I'll go through kind of the individual performances, but generally everyone played all right. And those who didn't sort of grew into the game. The setup itself was interesting. All the talk has been, would he play a back three, which he played pretty consistently at Strasbourg, or would it be a back four? It was a back three in possession, wasn't it? And Hato took up that kind of really interesting position that we saw actually a lot last season, Cucurella do under Maresca, which was almost becoming this kind of attacking midfielder, entering the box. Cucurella did it time and time again last year, scoring kind of really important goals, most notably that goal against Man United in the really important 1-0 win at the end of the season. And there it came, obviously Hato scoring that goal just as we needed it, really, just before half time, and what a strike it was by him. And I thought he was brilliant today, played really, really well in what is quite a complex position. In terms of what else you can take from, I guess, the way that we played, and again, it's Charlton, I don't want to overanalyze. The things you were looking for was the stuff that he talked about before the game, which was sort of attitude and work rate, not taking Charlton too lightly. Probably it being his first game, you were going to get less complacency anyway, and I think actually right from minute one, we were pretty much on it, which was good. It was a far cry from Lincoln earlier in the season where we were just all over the shop, but much, much better. I liked one thing that they talked about in the commentary, actually, which I people probably noticed, but obviously one of the big threats for Charlton was always going to be set pieces and free kicks and throw-ins coming into the box. It was interesting when they had deep free kicks and were putting everyone up for the ball. Chelsea went really high up the pitch. We weren't dropping back into our penalty box if we could avoid it. We were, at one point, 30 yards up the pitch. And that I thought was really smart, because it meant even if we lost that first header, which we did more often than not, they're still 30 yards from goal. And actually, I like just seeing little things like that, just small tactical thoughts that clearly Liam Rosenior and his team have kind of drilled into them already about how we were going to approach situations like that, which again has been driving me, to be honest, mad with the way that we have been certainly dealing with set pieces. I mean, we did concede from a set piece, so there's still a lot of work to do. But if you are going to concede and he's going to see the problems we've got there, do it in a game where you win 5-1, right? What was on the bingo card? Chelsea conceding from the set piece, definitely on the bingo card. Garnacho getting booed by the opposition fans every game. It's almost weird, isn't it, at this point? It doesn't matter who we play, where we play, Garnacho gets booed every time he gets the ball. It's kind of fascinating. I think it's the haircut. If I was to say to him the reason why, I think it's his general haircut his demeanour and but yeah, it probably can't help him actually. You know, that's got to be quite distracting, but it just feels like we see it all the time. Chelsea missing a sitter on the bingo card. There's Liam Delap. What a chance that was for him. He did all right when he came on, but you just got to bury those chances, and it would have been good to see him keep his momentum going. And of course, lots of songs from the away fans about Clearlake, about Roman Abramovich, and about Ighali himself. I thought I'd go through the player performances. Jorgensen in goal. Again, my thoughts were that we might see Sanchez today, but he obviously went with the cup keeper option. And bar a couple of sort of flappy moments from crosses, particularly in the first half, I actually thought he did pretty well. And clearly he's seen the memo about Rosenior liking kind of the Edison or Allison sweeper keeper kind of players, because he was certainly doing his best for an audition of that a couple of times in that second half, wasn't he? And actually did a really good job with one where he let the ball bounce, but then turned and was very, very composed and calm. I mean, I don't know what our heart rates are going to be like watching this on a consistent basis if it is to be the way we play, but to be fair, Jorgensen did all right today, didn't he? Josh at the back, playing off on the right of the back three. I just love him as a player. There's been very rare that I've seen him play in a Chelsea shirt and haven't been impressed. And again, that was another one today. I think that actually this formation could really suit him. I think he could be one of the real winners of the setup and the way that Rosenior wants to play. I thought he was brilliant. Badiashile on the other side of the back three, I thought in the first half was dreadful. Really, really bad. Picked up a booking after 5 minutes, and you're like, oh God. And every time the ball went near him in the rest of the first half, I had my heart in my mouth thinking he's gonna get another red card for us and we're gonna be back in that situation. The halftime debate we were having was who's been a worse signing for Chelsea, Badiashile or Tosin. That's kind of how bad it was. But actually, like or him particularly, I think grew into the game a bit second half and was fine. Was fine in the second half, but in that first half, just gave Charlton so many sort of half chances we didn't need to do, and he's just so casual, isn't he? When you watch him play, it's like he's playing at sort of 90% speed. You know, when you like slow down a video or something, and you're kind of watching it slightly in slow motion. That's how it always feels when I'm watching Badiashile. It's like he's just a little bit on slow down. It's almost like he's so casual that you kind of want to let him know there's a football match going on around him at times. But no, he was all right second half. But first half, it was terrible. Tosin, actually, to be fair to him, I thought would play pretty well today. Won virtually everything around him in the air, and obviously scored, what was it at the time, quite an important second goal for us with a really good header. And yeah, he was decent. And again, how much will he play? We don't know. It's if I certainly can't read into him being in the lineup today. Who knows? I thought the wide men were an interesting one today. It is a kind of a wing-back role that Gittins and actually had to play. Being the fact it's Charlton, we were so dominant, really they looked like wingers, didn't they? They were so high up on the pitch. But I think in a different type of game, like if we see, we'll learn a lot more if we have the same setup against Arsenal in the week, what that role really looks like. But I thought Gittins in the first half was really good on the right. It looked a lot more confident. He was the one person really in that first half you thought might create something, and was kind of taking on his marker. Looked a little bit more confident, didn't he? Like he'd been told just to get his player a bit more. And faded a bit, but in the first half was decent. I thought Garnacho was frustrating on the left, just didn't really ever get into the game. Again, I talked about him getting booed every time he touched the board. Don't think that affected his performance really, but I didn't think he was great. And I do wonder about those two. Just wonder if they might be the ones who lose out a little bit in this setup under Rosenior, where wingers have a slightly different role. Time will tell. But yeah, my early gut feeling is that if there are to be a couple of players who kind of end up playing less minutes, it could be those two, but we'll see. Caicedo and Santos in the middle, I thought both were excellent, and I think we might be seeing the start of a partnership in those two that we see fairly regularly. We know how much Rosenior loves Andre Santos as a player. We know that from his history, their history together. We know as well that he absolutely loves Caicedo. He called him the best centre midfielder in the world to Joe Cole pre-match. And as a two, if you worry a little bit about Chelsea physically sometimes, and I think we have done, certainly when it's been Caicedo and Enzo, we thought, did we get overrun sometimes in there? I think when you've got Caicedo and Santos, we'll be very, very hard to bully. So I think that could be something to watch out for. And then Buonanotte and Mark Gui, the other starters, they did all right, didn't they? Buonanotte, I feel like the performance he saw today is every performance he's had in a Chelsea shirt, which has just been like, yeah, he's all right, he's neat and tidy, without ever getting you off your seat really as a player. And actually, I thought Mark Gui didn't do anything really until he got his goal. And then you're like, okay, he's got his goals, he can't, as a striker, complain too much. But yeah, both just for me not quite at the Chelsea level right now. And in both cases, I wouldn't be hugely surprised if we don't see them in the Chelsea shirt next season. Those that came off the bench, they just all raised the bar, didn't they? Enzo actually I thought was class when he came on. Immediately you saw his level of passing and he just looked a class above, as you'd expect playing Charlton, but he immediately made us better. Esteval lively, winning that penalty, maybe a little bit fortunate, but actually unlucky not to score a couple himself. Enzo's penalty was absolutely emphatic with the last kick of the game. Likewise, Neto, who was only in for a few minutes, but good for him to get that goal, because we were saying in the week that he looked knackered, his confidence looked a bit low. It's Charlton in the cup, but you know what? Scoring a goal at any level, it still gives you that little buzz, which is probably not a bad thing ahead of Arsenal. And yeah, Delap and Fofana. Delap said did all right, should have scored, and Fofana only in for a few minutes, but not a huge amount to add. So overall, great win, good start for Rosenior. He'll be happy with that. And my final thought on the game is the one that I always say about, because I am a broken record on this, but how refreshing was it watching a game without VAR and just being able to enjoy the goals as they went in without having to half hesitate, no, it's going to be checked and all those kind of things. It was a bit of a throwback. I personally just really enjoyed that, and it just makes watching football just a lot more enjoyable, I think. But I'll hand over to Joe. Job done. Very happy with that. And the new era begins with a win. Over to you, Joe.
Good morning and welcome in. Yes, that was Liam Rosenior's first Chelsea game. And to be honest, looking at the stats from the managers that have played their first Chelsea game, he is in a sort of small league of his own there, because I think our last 7 managers have failed to win their first match. So, yeah, the arrow pointing upwards in that direction, certainly for sure. I'm still a little bit disappointed, if I'm honest with you, after the Fulham match. It hasn't fully left me. And the way we just basically tossed away 3 points to Fulham, when I think everybody knows nowadays in the Premier League, there are no easy matches. And even though I sort of criticise Fulham as being a little bit below average or an average team, they're still going to be difficult to beat if you give them an upper hand. And that's what we did with Good Correa losing his head and making us go down to 10 men. Because I really believe the significance of these 3 points that we're just casually dropping left, right and centre in the league is going to cost us hugely coming into the season. And all we hear about is that Chelsea need to qualify for the Champions League, otherwise it's going to be an unmitigated disaster financially for us. And I don't think the players seem to be getting that memo. And yeah, it's just all too easy just to go to Fulham, get a man sent off after 25 minutes and then play the rest of the game like you don't care, and expect Chelsea fans just to be like, it's all right, we've got Charlton next week, we're going to beat Charlton and everything will be okay. To me, it's not. And I think that's the biggest concern for me, is that I don't think the players seem to understand their actions are going to cause them to be in a really poor position come the end of the season if they don't really turn this league form around and quickly. But listen, I realise this isn't a Fulham podcast now, and we're moving on to new things, and that is in the past and I can't change it, so I won't go on about that. But listening to Chris talk about the game there was a lot I agree with. There was a couple of points I was a little bit unsure about, and I'm going to start defensively because that's where the biggest concerns are for me. If Chelsea are going to play a back three going forward, and I think Rosenior has sort of said that he might go to a back three some weeks, he might go to a back four on other games, yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all for the team to be able to adapt to different formations mid-game, before a game, and also adapt to the opposition you're playing in if they decide to surprise you with something. So I'm all for that. But the trouble we have is that we have some of the worst defenders in the league. Tosin, to his credit, last night didn't have a bad game in the centre of the pitch, but Charlton were terrible. And we cannot look at Charlton as any form of barometer of how good Tosin is based on that performance. But on a one-off game, I've got to give Tosin some credit. He played okay last night, scored a decent goal. And there's not a lot more I can say about him. He was fairly dominant in the air, I would say, in that centrepiece of the back three. But let's not kid ourselves that Charlton were a good team or they played well, because they didn't and they weren't. And yeah, their pass completion rate was about 50 the entire game. And Chelsea had about 200 inside 15 minutes. So that's a sort of level of team that we were playing against. The other big problem is Ben Marbadishio on the left-hand side of a three. Chris said that he thought he had a pretty miserable time of it in the first half. I'll be honest with you. I thought he had a pretty miserable time of it the entire game. His first half performance was utterly shocking. I mean, the yellow card that he speaks about is so brain dead. He doesn't need to do it yet again. But it's a shove and a haul over, one-on-one, instead of running with your man. There used to be a school of thought with defenders is, if you just run with your player, there's every chance that you might either get back and make a block and a sliding tackle, or you force him into a position, get your body into a good position where you could show him the line, stand him up. But Chelsea defenders are very quick to put hands on people and haul them down. Could have been a case in point against Harry Wilson on Wednesday night. And when you start looking at players because they're disappointing you, you can't really get it out of your head. And I think some people might think that when you look at a player and you criticise them, all you want to do is directly criticise them and hope they don't play ever again. I want Ben Marbadishio to be fantastic for Chelsea because he makes Chelsea a brilliant football club. And I want Tosin to be fantastic for Chelsea. But the facts are, and will always remain, they are not good enough. And Badiashile, he missed every single duel. His passing into midfield was woeful. Missed his target on more than one occasion. And I'm not talking a 30, 40-yard raking pass. I'm talking a 5-yard pass into midfield, which he was just diabolical at. He did that schoolboy thing that every dad and every mum is screaming on the sideline on a Saturday and Sunday morning, do not let the ball bounce. How many times did we let the ball bounce last night and then he would lose the second header before giving away yet another foul? And I'm sorry, when Liam Rosenior came out at the end of the match and said, Big Benny had a fantastic game and Tosin was like a mountain and what a great player he was last night, it scares the life out of me because I think that Liam Rosenior just wants to be everybody's best mate at the moment. He's the new guy in the building. He doesn't know anybody yet. Obviously, he gives starts to people that are on the fringe of the Chelsea squad. And then they get a start against Charlton. We win 5-1 and everyone goes home tonight thinking that's an absolutely fantastic result and what a great team and what a great squad we've got. And the commentary last night was very much saying the same thing. Chelsea's squad's fantastic. Look, Cole Palmer's not even on the bench. Reece James isn't even on the bench. And look at the players that we've got coming on and all the rest of it. And to be fair, the ones that are on the bench, that's the Premier League team. And the ones that played last night, in certain cases, not all of them, but in certain cases, they should be nowhere near that. And when they come on to shop the tired players, they make us worse. They don't make us better in the Premier League against the elite teams. So let's not kid ourselves into thinking that when Big Ben, Tosin, Jamie Gittins, Mark Guiu, just to name some, they're not making us better when they come on as a substitute in the Premier League. So we need to kind of discard that theory altogether at the moment. But my worry is that Rosenior is going to continue to play these players because he doesn't really know them yet. And we haven't got time mid-season to be experimenting with people that are basically bang average football players. There's just no getting away from it. And this kind of leads me on to a more worrying concern if Chelsea do play a back three, which I don't mind. I quite like Chelsea in a back three, always have done. But my concern is we don't have the players for it now. And if you're telling me we've got to play an extra defender, so we've got to play Ben Marbadishile or Tosin in my team over, let's just say, an Enzo Fernandez or an Andre Santos, for example, I'm not okay with that. Because Chris mentioned there about people coming in and how well Enzo Fernandez did when he came on as a sub, which he did, by the way. And obviously Esteval was fantastic, and he was awesome, and not just for the penalty that he gained, but which wasn't a penalty, by the way. I'm gonna go on record to say that wasn't a penalty, but his general all-round play was awesome, and the way he's so direct, he sees goal and he's just like, I'm gonna go and get one. No fanny, no flannel. He's just up there doing his bit, being fantastic like he always is. And boy, oh boy, we've got some special talent on our hand with Esteval. He's incredible. We've got to make sure that we don't piss him off, because, my word, he's a player that's going to be for the ages, I think. But you look at all of Chelsea's extra players there and you say to yourself, where are they all going to go? Because personally, I would love to see Gerard Hatto play in that left centre-back role instead of Benoit Badiashile. I think he's going to be an awesome player. I think I really liked Gerard Hatto, and he started his season under Maresca with, I'd say, trepidation and almost nervousness. And it didn't look like he was trusted by Maresca at all. And I think he just needed maybe a little bit of confidence, a little bit of a arm around the shoulder. And already in 2 matches, he's looked, you don't want to get overboard, like I say, because it's Charlton and Fulham, but I thought he's had 2 very, very good games. And even when he came on against Man City, I thought he was excellent there too. If he goes in for Badiashile, I'll be happier with that. But if Badiashile and Tosin remain and keep their places, certainly for this season, because Cole was injured, that means we're taking away an Enzo Fernandez, we're taking away an Andre Santos in the midfield, because we can't get them all in. I felt as though the Hatter actually gave us really good balance on that left-hand side of the 3 yesterday. I thought that was a good tactical switch. But you've got to remember, there's Lavia to come into this team when he's fit, if he's ever going to be fit. Or you've got Cole Palmer, you've got Reece James, João Pedro, Esteval. There are a lot, and there's many players that I haven't mentioned. There are so many football players that you're trying to you're going to sort of cram into one small space, and they don't go because you're playing the extra defender. And if we've now got to watch Chelsea play with Benoit Badiashile and Tosin at the back for the next, goodness me, let's just say 3 or 4 months, instead of seeing one of those top quality football players in midfield, I don't think that's going to go down very well. And the only way that's ever going to be a thing is if Chelsea win games. If Chelsea win games with these players in the team and he plays a certain system, a bit like what Conte did, then people can't really say anything, including me. But I just fear that we're going to be taking out one of our fantastic football players in that midfield area to make room for an extra defender. And football isn't played very much these days as like 3 centre halves, 2 wing backs. It's a much more fluid thing in the 21st century. But the facts remain the same. You're playing an extra defender who can't play football. And what do you want from your Chelsea team? I'm not sure I want to see Benoit Badiashile or Tosin play over any of the players that I've just mentioned. And there were people who were saying, well, of course, don't be so ridiculous. Cole Palmer doesn't play in the same position as Badiashile. Well, I know that. But if he plays, that takes away an attacking role, an attacking position. So it's just a case of Rosenior's got to be very tactically aware. He's got to have broad shoulders, and he's just got to be very clear of mind, because at the moment, everybody wants to be his mate. Everybody's high-fiving him. Everybody's patting him on the back and saying what a good job we did last night. And he's saying what a great team we've got, and the coaches are fantastic, and the owners are unbelievable, and everyone's fantastic for him at the moment. In 4 weeks, things are going to look very, very different, because it will be your results that tell you everything about where you are, not what your performances are doing. Because at the moment, I think that it's all very well saying that Chelsea played well, but if you get beat every week, or you draw games that you shouldn't draw, the fans are going to turn on you really, really fast. So he needs to make sure that he's doing everything that he can to not only make Chelsea look an attractive team to watch, which I think he will do, by the way. I was very impressed with him last night, but he has to get results. He has to get results. We haven't seen enough of Chelsea in the league or in any other competition at the moment, part of the FA Cup third round. So it's hard for any of us to judge him. And I'm not judging him when I say this. These are just things I'm pointing out to say these are the traps that you can fall into. I will just briefly say something that Chris didn't mention about the game last night. Wasn't it refreshing to see Chelsea score and then keep going for goals? I think that was my biggest takeaway, was that we didn't sit back and just say to ourselves, oh, we're 3-1 up. Oh, that'll do. We tried to get a fourth. And then when we got a fourth, we kept going again and tried to get a fifth. And to be honest with you, Esteban could have had a hat-trick. Enzo Fernandez had a great shot when he come on. That could have gone in, dipping in. And there were many more chances in that second half when Charlton were getting absolutely knackered that we could have made a real kind of cricket score out of it. But 5-1 is not to be sneezed at. And it was nice to see Chelsea get some goals again, because we feel like we've been really lacking in that department of late. And I think what you can say about Enzo Maresca was that he did suffocate the life out of games. And I would love to see Chelsea not be cavaliers to the point where they're stupid and reckless, but when there's games like that last night, or you've got a Premier League team on the rack and you can sense they're wobbling, is not to sit back and let them come back into the game. It's actually to go for them. The Premier League is quite, I would say now more so than ever, it's attack. And there's goals galore, VAR checks all over the place for everything. You know, the amount if you can get, for example, Estevao and Cole Palmer running into the box, going past their player, not looking for fouls, but getting tripped up or pulled, you're more likely to get a penalty than you are balling around with it at the back, passing it 88 times to nobody and going nowhere. I'd rather see my players in the box threatening the other end than our defenders basically hammering around at the back, like I say, and going nowhere with the ball. So, look, as a one-off game, Liam Rosenior has come in. He's won his first match. He played a very strange team, but he was obviously confident in what he had last night, and they've obviously looked at Charlton and thought that, you know, they could probably play any team and get a result last night, but there were some shocks yesterday in the FA Cup, so you have to be careful. But he's won the game handsomely. He hasn't let the team be okay with a 2-1 or a 3-1. He's made them go for more goals, and he brought on attacking players to try and get more goals, which I really enjoyed. So you can't fault him for the game last night. And like I say, I'm like any Chelsea fan, I'm right behind him. I really am. I want him to do well. I want him to succeed. He comes across as a fantastic guy. He looks the part. He sounds the part. I like his press conferences. I like what he has to say after matches, etc. And I just hope that we can see some of this exciting football with some of our better players on the pitch in the Premier League really, really soon. Just a very, very quick one before I go. Jorgensen last night I thought was outstanding. And that's the best game I think I've seen him play for Chelsea. He looked confident. He looked assured of himself. I don't think he's going to be the number one for Chelsea ever, but I just wanted to say he gets a bit of stick from me as well sometimes. And I think that he was brilliant last night. And he played that sweeper keeper role insanely well. And to be honest with you, if all the talk is that Mike Penders is our number one next season and he comes back from Strasbourg to be that, then I would be very excited to see him play out from the back like he does. Because if you see him at Strasbourg, he plays basically on the halfway line. It's incredible. So that'll be something fun to watch in the future. But for now, we'll be back later on. A great 5-1 win for Chelsea. And plenty of questions for Liam Rosenior to ponder.
Well, good morning. Sunday morning. And Chelsea won again. What a relief. And as is many things in life, there's always someone worse off than you. And as bad as it has been in the last, 6 weeks or so for Chelsea, our friends down at Tottenham, they've had it even worse. And they crashed out of the FA Cup, of course, yesterday. And their season is, a bit of a car crash, really. And quite an interesting one, because Thomas Frank, I think, was a manager that when he went to Spurs, quite a few of us looked at and had quite fancied. I'd certainly fancied him as a potential option. I think Joe and I talked about him before we started the pod, even when we eventually got appointed Maresca. I felt like he might be a good fit, but is perhaps a good example of that step from really the difference between kind of managing a club that isn't expected to win and can play in a slightly different way to managing one that has to be on the front foot all the time and make things happen. And it just isn't working for Spurs. And I know a few Spurs fans, particularly Cole, who listens sometimes, who already wants kind of rid of Frank. So there's always someone worse off, isn't there? Always someone worse off. I wanted to talk about two things this morning. So one is Clearlake, and one is the sort of team setup and what we might see against Arsenal. I'm gonna talk about Clearlake and Igbali because it was such a big. It's been a huge part of the atmosphere, very, very clearly in the last two away games. We've talked about it a little bit in the pod, but it's been really, really loud and clear. And I've talked about the fact there is obviously a protest coming up. So let's talk about it a little bit. So my view on the protest is it's fairly simple. I mean, first thing is free speech. People are absolutely entitled to protest against anything they like. That's the world we live in. I think that's absolutely right and fair. And I completely understand with the frustrations there are with Chelsea's ownership and some of the decision making that has happened. What I'll say about the protest specifically is I just don't think it's a great look as a Chelsea fan. It doesn't sit quite right with me. And the reason is that I see fans that have protested in the past, and the fans that I genuinely feel real sympathy for are the Bury or the Macclesfield fans or the Sheffield Wednesday of old, where their clubs have had owners come in, bleed the club dry, leave the club in bankruptcy, at the risk of oblivion, and all these kind of things. I think are just real issues that should be protested and just shouldn't be allowed to happen, full stop. And I think that reason for protesting is absolutely fair. And you know what? I would join them in that. On I guess our size of club, I'd look at Man United and Spurs protests in recent years, both of which did last season quite high profile. And I feel like that's a bit more around a lack of ambition and a lack of wanting to win on the pitch, and in both cases, commercial revenue being seen as more important than investing in the team and making sure that they continue to be competitive. And again, I sort of have a bit of sympathy with that as well. I think with the Chelsea one, I just don't know if it falls into that category. I think that the protests really, and I've read up about it, it's been well documented, and they've done a nice job in explaining kind of the reasons why. But I really see it as a frustration with how the money's been spent, and clearly the lack of the stuff that we talk about on the pod a lot, right? So the lack of investment in experience, overloading in young players, perhaps overloading the wrong positions at times, where we've talked about not another winger and all those kinds of things. And I think these are absolutely fair frustrations and right to be, we're right to be pissed off about it, right? But I just don't know. It doesn't sit right with me to be sort of protest level. And I've got friends who are like Palace fans, and they're just like, oh, Diddums, you don't like the way that your club spent over £1 billion. Womp womp, very sad for you type thing. And I kind of I don't know, I just almost feel a bit embarrassed by it, if I'm being completely honest. And I know that's a bit of a strong view, but I don't know, to me, it doesn't sit right. And I think the real problem, and let's talk about what I think the problem is. I think the real problem and the undercurrency for the fans singing and for the protest is a lack of trust. And a lack of trust in where the project is really going, what they really want Chelsea to be, how important winning on the pitch really is, a lack of trust that they have the club's best interests at heart, and ultimately, what do we care about? We care about success on the pitch, right? So I'm going to play in a clip now from Simon Jordan, who most listeners will probably know him. He's a former Crystal Palace chairman, very big broadcaster here in the UK on TalkSport, very forthright in his opinions, does not beat around the bush when it comes to criticising owners, managers, players, you name it. He met Eghbali recently and talked on TalkSport last week about his views on him and on, I guess, where Chelsea's going. I'll play that in now so you can hear it.
I can tell you that specifically Eghbali is one of the most compelling, capable individuals that I've ever met in football. I've got no allegiance to Chelsea. I couldn't give a monkeys about Chelsea. The team I care about is Crystal Palace. So when I'm praising somebody, it's not because I'm getting a backhand or because I've got some affiliation, or it's because I speak the same language as them. Because when I see someone that's really, really good, and it's very rare, because I see a world of blaggers and people that BS all the time and people that will have you believe they can do things and they can't. I think Eghbali is one of the most capable individuals that I've ever come across, both commercially and in his vision for Chelsea and his understanding of what's required of owning a massive football club. And I've been around football and I've been around most boardrooms and around most people, and I've met most of them. This was one of the most compelling individuals that knows what he wants, knows how to achieve it. And I'm telling you, I'll be very surprised if he doesn't.
So I found it really interesting. I really like Simon Jordan. He's a controversial character, but he's a really interesting listen always. And I do trust his opinion and I do value what he has to say. I've also read his book, by the way. He's got an excellent autobiography that talks about what it was like to be the owner of Crystal Palace and all of the stuff that comes with being in football. But I found his comments on Igbali really interesting. And of course, the proof is in time and all these kinds of things. But what it jumped out to me was he's met Igbali, he's spoken to him, he's seen the side of Igbali that none of us have. And all we see is this character in the crowd at games, obviously sitting next to Liam Rosenior at the Fulham game and at Stamford Bridge, who maybe looks like he doesn't quite get it at times, doesn't always cut the right look in when he's at the game. And all this stuff sounds really silly, but we compare it to all we have is judging these little things. We see him walking towards the dressing room after games. We think, well, that isn't a good look. We don't like that. All we have is that. And all we had with Roman was when he first came in, his sort of like childlike enthusiasm celebrating goals, right? So his first ever game, winning at Anfield, him celebrating the goals, just like we were watching it either at home or in the stands. So we were like, oh, he's like one of us. And then all we then had with Roman really was seeing success on the pitch and then singing his name and this amazing journey we were on. And really, he started so well. It was amazing and we never looked back. It hasn't started as well with Igbali and Clearlake, but we've not heard from him. And I think that problem is trust. And I think the solution is actually fairly straightforward, at least as a starting point, and it's communication. When the owners took over from Abramovich, they promised lots of things. They talked about the fact that there needed to be more of a data level, a lot more data in the club, data level recruitment. It's about squad imbalance in terms of ages and wages and all these kind of things, all these lovely things. But one of the key things they talked about was wanting to be a pioneer in fan engagement and communication with fans. And, they met with the Chelsea supporters group before the takeover, and it felt like, okay. And I remember this a lot. I remember really this resonating with me, that they were really going to show that this is the way that you should communicate with fans. And in all honesty, we haven't seen it. We haven't seen what was promised, certainly not on a consistent level, and certainly not in the ways that I think would really, really make a difference to fans. My advice, and I think I've said it before, would be really simple. Start with a video. Just come and talk to us in the same way that we got that nice polished interview with Liam when he joined the club. Do it with Igbali. Do it with the sporting directors. Share your vision in the open. Tell us what's important to you. Do show us what Simon Jordan has clearly seen when he confidently says Chelsea will win the league in the next couple of years, the next 2 or 3 years. Show us that show us a little bit so we can understand you a little bit. And I always think that'll make such a big difference, because this lack of trust and really not understanding what these guys are about, I think that's what brings this huge amount of negativity around the club right now. Moving on to the Arsenal game on Wednesday, huge game, of course. I think it's probably actually a bigger game for Chelsea than it is Arsenal, for being honest. I think we know that Arsenal have much bigger fish to fry this season, favourites for the Champions League, favourites from the Premier League. They've got big games coming up, at Forest on Saturday, for example. So my first thought in terms of what we see in lineups, I think Chelsea will be full strength. I'm not sure Arsenal will. That would be my first thought. Again, it'll be interesting to see when the lineups come out, but my gut feeling would be that we'll be stronger in terms of what we put out than Arsenal, and particularly with it being Liam Rosenior's first game. It's big for him. Now, I want to touch upon something Jay said, and a very justifiable concern about playing 5 at the back or 3 at the back and what it means for our centre-backs, where I'm completely in agreement that we've seen it, right? Tosin and Badiashile are and have consistently been weak points in this Chelsea side. I think when the team came out yesterday, I did say to a few people, I said, oh God, he hasn't seen us play, has he? He hasn't seen these guys play. I was very worried when I saw the team, but obviously it turned out fine. But I'll spin it another way, because I watched a really, really great video on YouTube from a good football analyst called James Lawrence Alcott, worth a look. And he talked about how he could see Chelsea playing under Rosenior and what a likely lineup might look like with a back three based on how he played with a back three at Strasbourg. And I'm going to spin it into where I think we could line up against Arsenal and talk to you why it might actually play to our strengths. So I'm going to go through the team. We've got Rob Sanchez in goal. That's a given. Right centre back of the three, I think we might see Reece James. I'm going to give you the team that James gave on the website and talk you through it. Right centre back, Reece James. I've talked about this before. I really like him there. I think he plays to a lot of his strengths. It gives us that ball playing centre back. Can you think of anyone better at doing that than Reece James from the back? He'll be absolutely incredible. Centre of the three, I think, is maybe the hardest to call, but I think it'd be one of Wes Fofana or Trev Chalobah to start. I think you can go either way. I think both bring different things to the table, don't they? But again, he talked on this video about the real ball progressors from the back in that back three, and the guys who are really kind of entrusted with the longer passing and read the passing lanes are the outside centre backs. So Reece James and the man on the left of the three become really important, and I'll talk about those. Left of the three, he had Cucurella, and I think there's a really good argument for Cucurella there. I remember him having a worldie of a game at Stamford Bridge for Brighton, playing left centre back and being really, really good there. I think it was the season before Chelsea bought him. So he can definitely play there, and I think he could be a good option. As Joe said earlier, I think Hato, a left centre back as well, is a really good option and certainly plays to a lot of his strengths as well. And I mentioned before that Ajax fans I've spoken to think that's his best position. Then you have, I guess, what we call the wing backs. I think the right wing back, Malo Gusto, is made for him. This role is made for him. I think Gusto is one of those that is so up and down in our opinions, really, on the podcast, and I think Chelsea fans in general, because it really, in fairness to him, depends on what role he's asked to play. But being a bombing right wing back just seems to play to all of his strengths, and he'd obviously have Reece James inside of him. So really, really got good options. Left wing back, much more difficult. I do think there will be games and times that you might see a Cucurella or a Hato there. I think there's a good chance actually on Wednesday against Arsenal that we might see one of those guys out there. Makes you a bit more solid. Certainly means you can drop into a 5 at times when you need to. In James' team on YouTube, he had Pedro Neto there on the left, and he said that left wing back can be very, very attacking in this shape. It was actually a former Chelsea guy doing the job at Strasbourg, Moreira, who is effectively a winger converted into a left wing back. And I think, again, that will be something interesting to see, but you could certainly see that. And then the rest of the team lines up. Centre midfield, Caicedo and Santos. We saw it yesterday. I talked about it yesterday. I won't echo it again, but I think it gives you that kind of bit of muscle and physicality that we've probably been lacking at times in the centre of the pitch. And I think those two would be really good in there. You roll in the fact that if we ever got Lavia fit again, what a good option he would be in those two as well. And it kind of gives you all kind of riches, really, if we ever get him fit. But Caicedo and Santos in there. And then effectively you have kind of two number 10s inside forwards. Cole Palmer, of course, plays on the sort of inside right of those. Again, when have we ever seen Palmer at his best? It's with Malo Gusto bombing on the outside of him. So I think you suddenly open up lots of lanes for Palmer to do his best work. And then on the other side, kind of the left side 10, in his team, it's Enzo Fernandez. I think that makes a lot of sense. Doing quite a different job to Palmer, actually, because he's more of a box crashing number 10, getting in there, can drop in and make it a solid midfield 3 with Caicedo and Santos at times as well. So I think you could see that a lot. I think you'll also have times when you could put João Pedro in there. You could put Esteval in there as well. And the idea of Esteval and Palmer as two number 10s, let's face it, is very exciting. And then centre forward, he had Liam Delap doing the work and stretching the pitch. But again, João Pedro could do that job against Arsenal on Wednesday. But I think it's a really interesting shape, really interesting lineup. Arguably plays to fix one of our weaknesses, which is a lack of top centre-backs. And you effectively fix that problem by only playing one of them. You're basically playing either Fofana or Chalobah with Reece James on one side and then Cucurella or Hato on the other side. So let's see what he does on Wednesday. It might be nothing like that. It might be a back four. It might be very, very different. The one thing I will tell you about Liam Rosenior is that he was flexible. One of the things you saw a lot in his lineups is he would, for example, they played most of their games in Europe with a back four this season, and in the league it would be much more likely a back three. So I think there will be flexibility, and that will be refreshing, won't it? Because I feel like under Maresca, where you saw flexibility and you didn't know what Chelsea would do would be in those big games. Those big games where he's going to come up with something, and more often than not, he did. It was in every other game. Those home games, away games where we're expected to win, you kind of knew exactly what Chelsea were going to line up with. You knew exactly what the shape would be. You knew what the tactics would be. And of course, we knew it, which meant every opposition manager knew it as well. And it felt like all they had to do was drop in with a bank of five at the back. Every team would play a five at the back against us, and we didn't have a clue what to do. So hopefully we'll see more flexibility under Liam Rosenior. But I wanted to share that team, because certainly seeing it, I looked at it and thought, that gets all of our best players on the pitch. And I think plays to a lot of strengths. And perhaps he has to come out, like Joe said, and say, oh, Badishu and Tosin are great. He's got to manage the squad, and these are members of the squad. Hopefully, that is just good media work and doing the right thing and keeping the squad happy, and not how he really thinks about who are the best two players in his team. But I think we'll find out a lot about that in the next couple of weeks, because we've got some big must-win games coming up the next three. Arsenal must win. Home to high-flying Brentford must win. Home to Paphos in the Champions League must win. They are not games that he can be mucking around with. And I think that we'll get a really good feel in the next week or so what he really thinks about his squad, what the most likely sort of setups are going to be. And yeah, it's going to be fascinating. That's a wrap from us for this week. We'll be back on Thursday after that big game against Arsenal to reflect on the game and hopefully talk about how Chelsea have got 1 foot on the step to Wembley. We'll see you next time. And remember, every little thing's going to be all right. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be all right.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.